Senator Carl Levin, the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, is with us in Detroit. Here in the studio, Representative Ike Skelton, who is the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, and General Anthony Zinni, who used to command American forces on that side of the world, including Afghanistan. General, I want to start with you. This whole question of what we see as debate in examining an issue here in this country, some people are telling us that in Pakistan and Afghanistan, they see that as dithering. What do you think the impact of this is right now?
Well,
you've been out there and spent a lot of your life dealing with this side of the world.
Sure. I think certainly it's great to have the strategic debate and to take all sides into account. But I think we have to be careful how long this goes on. It could be seen not only out there in the region by our allies, even as the enemy, as being indecisive, unable to make a decision. We've had a strategy since March. We have a general out there who's probably the best qualified we could have that's telling us what we need on the ground to have the security space and the time to get those non-military things done. And I just don't understand why we're questioning that judgment at this point, and I hope this doesn't go on much longer.
Well, General, it's going to be a difficult thing, isn't it, for a president to send his own man out there, and that's who General McChrystal is, who went out there and came back and said, I need a whole lot more troops out here. Isn't that going to be a hard thing just politically for him to turn him down?
Yeah, well, I don't know much about the politics, but I can certainly tell you from a military perspective, you have the finest lineup you could have in Secretary Gates and Admiral Mullen, General Petraeus, and General McChrystal on the ground. And I'm sure this advice is well thought out, and it is what you need on the ground if you're going to make this kind of strategy work.
So you think we do need those troops?
I do think we need those troops, and I think General McChrystal has made an honest and thorough assessment as to what you need. It begins with security. You can't do all the other things without it.
All right. Well, let me go to Carl Levin, because under Levin, it's my understanding you think we don't need more troops out there, and here you are, the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee.
I would not commit to more combat troops at this time. There's a lot of other things that need to be done to show resolve. What we need a surge of is Afghan troops. There was a Marine captain out in Helmand province who put it this way. He says, our Achilles heel is a shortage of Afghan troops. When I was in Helmand province just a month ago, we were told by the local folks what they want is their Afghan army to be strengthened. And the ratio of Marines to Afghan soldiers when we were down in Helmand province was 5 Marines for 1 Afghan soldier. That is exactly the wrong ratio. It ought to be reversed from that. And in terms of dithering, when President Bush was considering at the end of 2006 for 4 months whether or not to increase the number of troops in Iraq, to surge those troops, September, October, November, December of 06, he took 4 months to decide that we should have a surge of American troops at that time. And by the way, when he made that decision, I believe it was against the wishes of his commander in Iraq, General Casey. So he made a decision which turned out to be the right decision in Iraq. It took him 4 months to do so. It ended up helping, not being the only reason, there were other reasons, but helping a more successful outcome in Iraq. So I think, and by the way, General McChrystal himself, people ignore what General McChrystal is now saying. Give deliberative process a chance. He supports looking at the strategy which was in place in March, but things have changed since March, and including that election in Afghanistan, which has had significant fraud.
Let me just ask you this, Senator. I mean, I think everybody would wish that we had more Afghan troops that you could surge there, but where are they? I mean, they would have to be trained. I mean, they're not there. If they were, I'm sure they would surge them. So where do you get these Afghan troops?
You get them by sending in a lot more trainers, 2,000 to 3,000 more trainers, including from NATO countries that have that responsibility. And by the way, just take a look at the equipment of the Afghan army. We do not have in place yet a plan to to surge equipment for the Afghan army. We have a lot of equipment in Iraq. Some of that's going to stay there. A lot of it's going to come home. A lot of it should go to Afghanistan. And when we were in Afghanistan, we pressed our people, where is the plan for surging equipment to the Afghan army? That is also a sign of commitment.
Let me go to your counterpart in the House, Congressman Skelton. It's my understanding you believe we ought to send those troops and get them out there right now, American troops.
Well, I think we have to look at it from day one. The war really didn't start until March of this year, when the president came forth with strategy, and frankly, an excellent strategy. He chose General McChrystal, who is the best in the business for this type of conflict. He asked General McChrystal for an assessment, and he got that assessment. And of course, that became known. It was public, and in essence, he's going to be asking for additional resources.
So you're going to back him up?
I back him up. I sent a letter to the president a number of days ago, spelling out in great detail, some 6 pages of letter, spelling out basically, give the general what he needs. You see, you have to have security in Afghanistan, you have to have governance in Afghanistan, and if you don't have both of them, your whole strategy falls apart.
Let me ask you about one of the things. I was kind of surprised because he said it was a hypothetical question. When I asked General Jones, did it necessarily follow that if the Taliban comes back, Al-Qaeda comes with them? He said, well, that's hypothetical. What do you think, General?
Just like water running downhill, they're going to come back in. They had a safe haven there at one time, and there's no reason to believe they wouldn't have a safe haven again. That's the purpose of this entire mission, to quell the Al-Qaeda and to make sure that the Taliban is not there to invite them back.
Well, General Zinni, I want to just kind of go around the table on this question. Do you think they'd come back, or would they just stay in Pakistan? Because some people are saying, well, why do they need to go to Afghanistan? They've got safe haven in Pakistan right now.
Well, I think they could find themselves with a safe sanctuary inside Afghanistan to work against the Pakistani military in the tribal areas, in the Swat Valley, just like the reverse when they went into Pakistan to fight our forces there. I think we have to remember this is not just about Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. We have 2 nations out there with nuclear weapons, one of which had the Taliban 65 miles from their capital. We have the Taliban and others trying to provoke some sort of conflict between these 2 nations. We also have a Taliban that are stretching their influence into Central Asia. I would say one thing about trainers. I've been a trainer, and it's wonderful to have a lot of trainers on the ground. Who protects the trainers? Who ensures the roads they're on aren't going to be full of IEDs because you can't control them? If you don't have enough forces on the ground, you give maneuver space to the enemy, the freedom to attack our outposts that are remote, ineffectively manned. And I think that you need both. It's not a matter of either or.
What about that, Senator Levin? Do you think it follows that Al-Qaeda will come back if the Taliban comes back?
I think there's a real possibility, and that's what ought to be protected against. And the question is how to maximize the chances of success in Afghanistan. And when General Zinni said that we've got a very strong chain of command starting on the field with General McChrystal, he's exactly right. And up that chain of command, we have a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We ought to listen to him. But above them all is a Secretary of Defense. He is a long way, and these are his words, from having decided that we should have more combat forces in Afghanistan. We ought to put some focus on what will Secretary Gates's recommendation be to the president under these new circumstances, including the changed circumstances in Pakistan, much more favorable, and including the governmental circumstance in Afghanistan with this flawed election, which has these allegations of fraud, which is much less favorable. We got to put some focus, not just on McChrystal, although we ought to listen to McChrystal when he says, yes, deliberate, yes, get strategy right, instead of focusing on resources, but we also ought to listen to the Secretary of Defense when he makes up his mind.
We have about 30 seconds left. Let me just ask you a quick question, Senator Levin. Right now, if this came to a vote, are there the votes in the Senate to send 40,000 troops to Afghanistan?
Well, first of all, there's going to be options offered. It's not just 40, but it depends, it seems to me, not just on what the recommendation is specifically, but what the other factors are that are presented to us. I don't think anyone can guess in advance what all that those
Mr.
complex
Skelton,
factors
what
are.
about the House?
Well, I think the House would support a gentleman that General McChrystal that is running the show. There's no question.
You think they would?
I think so.
All right. Well, I'm sorry our time's up. Thank you all for a very interesting roundtable.